Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 113. In this episode, I am calling it the Data Advantage because all of the things that I've been talking about over the past 2 weeks have finally come to fruition, and I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about data in this episode, and this may be a little bit of a longer episode because I'm going to tie it a little bit to my strategy because I find that I can not talk about that enough as we move into the future here. So real quick, announcements. So I wanted to let everybody know that I have a new book coming out. Now you're probably wondering, Michael has a new book coming out? He hasn't really been writing over the past few weeks. Well, it's actually a book that I wrote last year. So you may recall if you were listening to the show last year that I actually wrote a book for the Alliance of Independent Authors, ALLI for short. ALLI is a nonprofit organization that helps self-published writers achieve ethics and excellence. I volunteer my time with them. And I actually co-host another show with ALLI called the Ask ALLI Member Q&A podcast, and that is with ALLI's director, Orna Ross. And Orna Ross is one of the most influential people in publishing, and I'm fortunate enough to have her ear for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes every month. And I noticed that we were answering the same questions over and over again for the show because we answer like very basic beginner level self-publishing questions. And so I asked her one day, I said, hey, what would you think if we put together a book that had all of the answers to the most common questions that we get on the show? So then when we start to get duplicate questions, we can just send them to a book. And that book is obviously free for ALLI members, so they don't have to pay anything for it. And then we can also publish this book in the marketplace, and that can be a revenue stream for ALLI. And by the way, I would love to be able to write it. And so she's like, yeah, send me a proposal. So I put together a book proposal, and she liked it, and I wrote the book, and we're going to be publishing it here very soon. So I just got the proofs back from the editor, and kind of a fun fact, something I kind of learned this week is that, did you know that there is such a thing as a professional book indexer? So this book is going to have a glossary and an index, and we're kind of mixing them together, so we're calling it a Glindex. And I did not know this, but we're actually going to send it to somebody who is a freelance indexer. That's all she does, is she puts together indexes for books. So like nonfiction books, encyclopedias, or, like any kind of books that need indexes, that's all she does. That's how she makes her living. And my head exploded when I was like, are you serious? Like, that is a real profession, a professional indexer, or better yet, a freelance indexer. Look it up. So that's going to be kind of a cool feature that this book is going to have. But anyway, I probably should say the name of the book. Terrible marketing, Michael. The name of this book is going to be called Your Self-Publishing Questions Answered, and it's going to take 150 of the most common self-publishing questions across writing, marketing, formatting, you name it, book cover design, and we're going to answer them in one place. So it draws on my knowledge over the past 7 to 8 years and the knowledge of Orna Ross and ALLI. Oh man, this is going to be a heck of a book. So if you are not on my mailing list, this is a great time to be on there. authorlevelup.com/fan club. I will let everybody know when the release date comes out, and we're probably going to offer the ability to get a free review copy of the book if you want that as well. So if you want to help a brother out and get a review copy, that's all good too. So wins for the week. So my big win for the week is what I'm going to be talking about today. And that's that I put the finishing touches on my database, and I was able to get it up and running officially. So it no longer has test data in it. It's got real data. I'm playing for keeps. So I've got my books all the way through 2016 loaded into the database. And I capture all sorts of information on my books, like the date it was published, the book description, any updates I made to the interior, any updates I made to the covers. all my costs associated with the books, all that is on one really easy to read, easy to populate dashboard. It looks amazing. And this week's video on YouTube, you're actually going to be able to see it in action. So if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, authorlevelup.com or youtube.com/authorlevelup, this Friday at noon, I'm going to be unveiling what it looks like. So I got it up and running, and the best part about all of this is that I also got my royalties up and running. So I am through 2017 royalties. So I've got 2014, 2015, 16, and 17 in the database. And each year of royalties took me about 3 to 4 hours to upload. And I know many of you that probably takes you 3 to 4 hours per month just to look at your last month's royalty statements, and I did all that in a couple hours. And it was because some of it was because I had some issues getting things uploaded. But I've got everything in the database, and the end game, and which I'll talk about later, is going to be ultimately to be able to get all of my royalties into the Access database with just a couple of clicks, which is very doable. So once I get all my historical royalties into the database, Access has a feature where you can just download your royalties into a certain location on your computer. You click a button, and boom, it goes into the database. It is that simple. That is the whole reason I've been doing this. So I don't know anyone out there that can say I'm able to do my royalties with just a couple of clicks. It's good stuff. So that is my win for the week. I'm very proud of that. Probably one of the top 10 non-bookie things that I've done in my career so far is this database. It's so out of the box. It's so weird, but it's just absolutely amazing. So my lessons learned this week. I have 2 lessons that I want to share with you. The first lesson was a lesson in business, and that is also a lesson that I got. Now, I just said that this royalty or this copyright database was one of the top 10 things that I've done in my career so far. But from a business perspective, it had the potential to be one of the top 10 flops had I proceeded to try to sell it to the community. And we're going to talk about that. But what I learned is that my audience at this time is not interested in getting help with royalties. And I think, I don't have enough data to predict this, but I think the author community in general, this isn't something that they want help with. And I'm going to talk a little bit about reasons for that. But, one of the things about being a business person and being an entrepreneur is that sometimes there are projects that you want to do and you don't do them because it doesn't make financial sense. The passion is there, but the financial sense is not. Right. And so, again, we'll talk about that here in a minute. The second thing I learned this week was a copyright lesson. So it's just a reinforcement of something that I've believed for a long time. And I think I talked about this last week, but I continue to learn this in different ways, in different flavors. And that is that your books are like real estate. Every house or every book that you create is like a house or an apartment building. And if you are a landlord and you own multiple homes or multiple apartment buildings, you have to manage those apartment buildings. You either have to do it yourself or you have to hire a property management company. And books are no different, in theory, than real estate. Intellectual property is really no different in terms of managing it than real property. And if you really think about that, if you internalize that, that changes how you think about the art and craft of writing. It just makes things so much different. So like, for example, with this database, and this is why I've been learning this in different ways, is that now that I'm starting to load my books into it, I'm loading my books into it one by one, and I'm starting to see gaps, like big gaps that I never really thought of when I was putting the books together, or gaps that have arisen over time. So like, for example, let me give you a perfect example of this. I have a series. It's a series that I think was ahead of its time when I published it. It's a nonfiction series for poets, and it's called Indie Poet Rockstar. That's the name of the first book in the series. And in that series, it's basically it's the Poet's Guide to Self-Publishing, Marketing, and the Ebook Revolution. So I wrote this book back in 2014, published it January 2015, because I could see very clearly then that what fiction writers were going through at the time with self-publishing and ebooks was very soon going to happen to poetry. And many of the predictions that I made in that book absolutely came true, and they're absolutely true today. But the book was ahead of its time when it started, but it has been a perennial, sells a couple copies a month, which I'm thrilled about, right? And I've got another book in the series called Indie Poet Formatting, because another problem that people have with poetry is formatting it for ebook and print. So I wrote a book that teaches you how to format your poetry collections for ebook and print. That book actually sells better than Indie Poet Rockstar, which is really weird. and I had, for a time, I think about 2 years, I had a box set. And the box set was called the Indie Poet Power Pack. And it was Indie Poet Rockstar and Indie Poet Formatting in the book at the same time. And I was going through it, and I was like, why did I ever unpublish that book? I don't understand why I did. It just doesn't make any sense. I should have never unpublished that book, especially now with more people turning to self-publishing who are poets. That's a great deal. It's a great value to be able to bundle those books together. Okay, well, as I was adding that book into the database, I was like, okay, this is a marketing opportunity. Maybe I need to get that book up. I need to refresh it, get it back on the market, and let's see what it does. Maybe it'll bring in a few extra bucks a month. Who knows, right? It'd be a great thing to run Amazon ads to. So it's like that's the kind of thing you just don't see when you don't manage your property at all. If you're a landlord, you have to know what's going on in your properties at all times. But as intellectual property landlords, we don't do that. We just publish books. Maybe we come back to them every once in a while, but we don't have a system for things. And that is what this database keeps reaffirming for me. And it's something I've always believed, which is why I created it, that your books are like real estate. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. Make a little sound. I'm getting off my soapbox. All right, so idea of the week. This is our new segment here of the show. Not so new now, because I think this is the third or fourth week. And this is an idea I had back in 2014. Essentially, the idea is a author marketing co-op. So, and maybe co-op isn't the most descriptive word for this. But basically, here's how it works. Imagine you've got 10 authors in a given genre. So like, say, military science fiction. 10 authors, and these authors would have to have a fair amount of sales in order for this to work. These authors get together and they create a book-selling website. So a portal where you can actually sell books. And they invite authors who are in that specific genre, so military sci-fi, to post their books onto that website just like they would post their books to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo, right? And they all market that website to their readers and to other authors in the military science fiction genre. So that way, the book only has books that are in the military sci-fi genre. So you are niched down to a very specific type of reader who is I think what Michael Anderle calls the whale readers. They'll buy a ton of books and read a ton of books in any given week or any given month, right? And so the co-op or the website just takes a cut of every sale to pay their expenses. Now think about this. This could be amazing in a genre like romance. I just think about the long tail of products and how the long tail is going to continue to be a thing, and more people are going to continue to find sales and success in the long tail. And so this could be an amazing way for authors to get their backlists in front of readers who like that genre. And like I said, if you publish your book on military sci-fi, bestbooks.com, well, then you know exactly what you're getting, right? So I think that could be a great thing. The only reason I think something like this hasn't happened is the 800-pound gorilla, which is Amazon. I think KU is a big problem here, because if your books are in KU and you're making a ton of money in KU and you're in the military sci-fi genre, this is the example I'm using, right? then you're going to be less incentivized to take your books out of that ecosystem unless you've got an incentive to do it, right? Now, I do think that being in KU, it's kind of like this game of musical chairs. At some point, the music's going to stop, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to really wish they weren't all into KU, but that's neither here nor there. But again, I think this could work only if the site could amass a gigantic list of books very quickly. I think the authors that found the site would also have to be very, very successful and influential. And it would really be predicated on getting big name authors in on this website. And I also think you'd have to find a way to implement print and audio. So I admit this is not a perfect idea, by any stretch of the imagination, and the reason it probably hasn't happened yet is because it's not perfect. But I think as more people start to get comfortable with direct sales, and more people are starting to become upset with Amazon and looking to take their business elsewhere, this could be a great way to support your local author. Just much like a lot of the initiatives out there that you can support your local bookstore. I think there's going to be more movement toward support your indie author. I think there's something there. Like I said, I don't think this idea would ever come to fruition in the way that I'm imagining it. I know that there are I've seen some sites out there that some science fiction writers have gotten together and created almost like a book bub, but for their specific genre. I think that's also a great way to think about this. But as we move into the future where things are going to become more niche, I think being able to stick together and band together with authors in your niche, it's a smart thing. So, all right, let's talk about the topic of the week. So I did a survey. I don't know why I didn't ask you guys to take the survey. You can take it if you want. It's at authorlevelup.com/royalties survey. And but I basically started talking about my database on authorlevelup.com. And I did a video last week, and it was I tried to SEO it and optimize it and all that. And it was a video called "How to Optimize Your Author Royalties, quickly," or something like that. I forget what it was called. And in that video, I laid out a problem, and the problem is author royalties are a pain in the neck, and it's something that takes me a significant amount of time, and I don't enjoy it. So therefore, why don't I find a way to solve this problem? And so at the end of this video, I kind of teased it. I showed them the Excel macros that I use to fancy up the KDP reports. And then I said, okay, in the next video, I'm going to show you the database, right? So I didn't really reveal it per se. And maybe that was part of it as well. Sometimes so much hinges on your execution, right? And so maybe the execution wasn't there. But I asked the viewers to take a survey at the end. And it's, again, authorlevelup.com/royalty survey. And it just asks a few questions, a few basic questions. How many books do you have out? How much time do you spend on royalties per month? On a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult is the act of doing royalties? How familiar are you with Microsoft Access? What else do you want to tell me? It takes you like 2 minutes, right? And so I asked a ton of people to do it. I even did a special Saturday episode of Writing Tip of the Day, and in my audience of about 20 to 30,000 people, only 6 people took the survey. 6 people. That's like 0.00, I don't know how many zeros, 0.01% of my entire audience. So that told me a number of things, right? The fact that I have so many people in an audience, and I can usually get, 20, 40 people to take a survey for me. It's usually not a big deal, right? The fact that no one was interested enough to even click on the survey link, I think taught me everything I needed to know about this. And it was contrary to kind of what I thought. What I thought people... Actually, let me take that back. I thought more people would be interested in this. But the people that did responded almost exactly how I thought they would respond. All right? So let me read the survey results to you. I'm going to pull it up right here. Okay, so because I just think this is interesting, right? Just hear me out here and just file this in the back of your head because you may need it someday. So the first question I asked is, how many books have you published? And only 6 people took this survey. The person with the fewest amount of books had published 1 book, and the person with the highest amount had published 17. The average was about 6 books. So that's kind of interesting. So that tells me right there that the only people that bothered to click on this survey were people that had a significant amount of books. But because most people didn't click on that survey, it's probably safe to say that the majority of my audience at least has fewer than 6 books on average. Look, take it or leave it with a grain of salt, right? How do you calculate your monthly royalties for all retailers today was the next question. And I offered a few options, right? So I said the first option is I put all my royalties on a master spreadsheet. I pay an assistant. I use a program like TrackerBox. I don't calculate my monthly royalties at all. And then I read Amazon's report sheets. I had an other feature. Okay, so 33% of people who responded, which again, 6 people, so I'm the king of small numbers here. But 2 of them basically said that they put all their royalties on a master spreadsheet. 0% paid assistants to do this, which I thought was interesting. I thought at least somebody would say they paid an assistant, but I was wrong. Again, 6 people, so take it or leave it. No one said anything about TrackerBox or similar royalty software. One person said that they don't even do it. Right, and that was kind of in line with what I thought some people would say. One person was traditionally published and said that their publisher is inconsistent in sending the royalty sheets, and then other people just said that they just relied on Amazon. All right, so that was interesting. And then the next question I asked was, how much time per month do you spend reviewing, calculating, or managing royalty statements? This is where it got interesting. 50%, or 3 of the people, said that they spend no time managing their royalties. Now again, it's people with an average of 6 books. They spend no time calculating their royalties. One person spent 1 to 2 hours. No one spent 3 to 4 hours, but 2 of them spent 4+ hours. All right, so 33% of my respondents spend 4+ hours per month handling their royalty statements. Again, 50% don't do anything at all. 30% spend 4+ hours. All right. And on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being easy and 1 being difficult, how do you view managing your royalties? Now, this was the most interesting question, the most interesting response, I should say. So, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the easy and 10 being difficult. No one said that this task was under a 5. All right. So I've got 1 person that said it was a 5, 2 said it was 6. 1 said it was a 9, and 2 said it was a 10. So 3 out of the over 50% of people said that this, or 50% of people said that this was a 9 or a 10 in terms of pain level, right? And the other half said it was a 5 or 6 in terms of pain level. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of pain. Even a 5 or 6 is something where it's like, hey, maybe you need to do something about this, all right? And then the next question was, would you pay money for a tool that could help you aggregate your royalties for all retailers with minimal effort? 66% of people said yes, so that's 4 people, and 2 people said no. Okay, totally fine. And what would you be willing to pay was the next question. Someone said $100-ish, depending on the features. Another person said $5 to $10 per month if the service was accurate. Another person made a really good point, and they said, it's difficult to say, but I pay for Vellum, which is $300. Why wouldn't I be willing to pay a similar amount of money for an app that would save me for reporting on my income? Which I thought was a point very well taken. Another person said anywhere from $200 to $500. So you probably could start with something like this at $100 per year, right? If you wanted to do a subscription, if you didn't want to do a subscription, I think you could probably get away with what people are paying for Vellum if someone wanted to develop a solution like this. Almost no one was familiar with Microsoft Access. I kind of expected that. So that kind of is what it is, right? So I shared those with you because I thought it was interesting. What I thought was that people would say that this is such a pain in the neck that I'm willing to pay money for it, right? But what I also thought people would say, I thought people would split up into camps. People would say this is really, really hard, so I don't do it, or this is really, really hard, and I spend an inordinate amount of time on this. And so I had to ask myself, I said, why is it that so few people took this survey? And the most obvious thing is that there's a lot of things going on in the world right now. I mean, coronavirus, COVID, it's not a great time for engagement of any kind. And I kind of knew that going into it. But, you'll take what you can get, right? But another thing that I was thinking is I wonder if I underestimated how many people are in Kindle Unlimited, and how many people just simply rely on something like Book Report, right? So like Book Report is great. I use Book Report every day. I got no problems with Book Report. But Book Report's only Amazon only, and it doesn't give you the whole picture. So you don't know how your book is performing on Kobo or Barnes & Noble or all the other places that you sell your books at. And so I think that, the combination of the coronavirus and just people's minds being occupied right now, and I get it, right? And then the fact that people are in KU and Book Report, that just tells me this isn't the right time for this. I might be a little bit ahead of my time, and the tool that I'm building may not be the right fit for the majority of people that are out there, right? Because the big problem with this is that you have to use Microsoft Access. Access is not sexy. I don't personally want to be in the business of software development. That's just not my thing, especially for an app that is not probably going to be intuitive for most people. And so therefore I said, you know what? I wanted to do something about this. I was really passionate about it. Now is not the right time. And I kind of wrestled with, well, what if I still build something right now? And then it's just kind of one of those things where you build it, and then at some point this will become more of a problem as more people start to publish more books and run into the same problems that I've run into. And so therefore I'll have a product or service that I can send people to, right? But then I realized, I was watching a lot of Access videos on YouTube, and while many of the features are the same, the moment Microsoft makes some sort of design change to it, my whole course is obsolete, right? So this is one of those things where it's okay, duly noted now. Maybe 6 months to 12 months in the future, things will be a little bit different. Maybe down the road, this is something where I can put together a quick course, maybe a 2-3 hour course teaching you how to build this sort of thing, and we'll go from there. But I do think, though, and this is where I think I have a blessing and a curse, is I can see the future on this. You can only bury your head in the sand for so long before you're going to have to solve this problem. Everybody listening to this, if you've published a book, you're going to have to pay the reaper at some point. You either don't do anything at all, and that comes with its consequences, right? Or you figure this out. And I think here's my take on this. With royalties, I personally would not pay for a service that is in the cloud or that is on the web. The reason for that is because your royalties are private. Your royalties are your own. They're nobody else's business, and it's not something that you want to be hacked. This is one of those things. It's kind of like voting. Pen and paper voting still makes the most sense, even though we live in a digital era, because of hacking. It's kind of the same thing with your royalties. This is something that you want locally on your computer. It's not something that you want in the cloud or as part of some cloud service. That's what someone's eventually going to offer. I don't agree with that approach. So anyway, maybe a little bit of a tangent, but you're going to have to solve this problem at some point. How you solve it, I think, is up to you. It's a choose your own adventure. I'm not saying that Access is a magic pill. It certainly is not a magic pill. It has its problems, but it's the only thing I can think of, aside from being an Excel wizard, that exists on your computer or is something that you can easily get without having to pay a whole lot of extra money. And even if you're a Mac user, Access is not available on the Mac. You've got to use a Windows computer to do it. If you have a Mac, you can run, with most Macs these days, you can run Windows on your Mac. I paid $139 for a Windows license. I paid $70-$80 for Parallels to be able to run Windows on my computer, and I was off to the races, right? So my main point here is that the more control and knowledge that you have about every facet of your business, then the more you can take control and advantage of other opportunities that other people can't see. That's why I called this episode The Data Advantage. I built this database because I believe that it is an unbelievable business advantage. Now, I could not even talk about this. I could just build it and just not say anything to anybody. But I do believe in sharing, the breadcrumbs along the way as I get better and wiser and stronger. Maybe there's something that people can listen to and learn from. And so data is the advantage here, right? So let me explain why, all right? I know now to the penny everything I've spent and earned on my writing business in the last 7 years, right? Once everything gets into the database. I know to the penny every one of my books' profitability, every one of my series' profitability. As I mentioned before, I now see gaps in my portfolio because now I'm looking at my books as data points. I see gaps in my portfolio that I never saw before. And some of those gaps are marketing opportunities. Some of those gaps are just kind of customer experience things. And those gaps are opportunities, right? This database makes me more efficient. I can now call up any aspect about any of my books in just a few seconds. So for example, if I get invited to submit one of my books to some marketing promo, right? And they want the title of the book, subtitle, the price, the links to all the different retailers where it's at, the book description, and the ASIN, right? I can now run a query in Microsoft Access that has all of that information because I loaded all that in there. I even got the links to all the books, so I don't have to go hunt for them anymore. And I can export that, and there you go, right? Like that makes me more efficient. I don't have to go and hunt for the Barnes & Noble and the Apple and the Kobo, and it's a nightmare. I know everybody listening has that problem. How do you solve that? Different ways to do it, but this helps me with that. And so it makes me more efficient as a writer, and it makes me more efficient in my business, And as I said before in the last episode, the future is moving toward more interconnected experiences, and building a database now, maybe this isn't the right database, but it's a smart bet, I think, on a future where writers are going to be able to extract data from many different sources as a way to gain insights on your books or business or marketing or whatever, and you're going to be able to connect your own data up to other sources that are out there. Maybe even to just upload your books to a new retailer, for example. Like, to me, that is the future. And that's, again, why I wanted to talk about strategy and tie this back to strategy. I have 5 pillars in my strategy. The first is to become a world-class content creator, to become a world-class marketer, to become a technology-driven writer, to become a data-driven writer, and to become the writer of the future. Now, how does all of this fit into that? Well, first and foremost, as I think about the coronavirus pandemic, and I look at our friends in traditional publishing, I look at our friends at the traditional publishing houses, the Big Five, and even some of the smaller presses. I look at the supply chain and all of the problems that this is causing. And it's highly realistic that a lot of traditionally published writers' careers could be over as we know them today. All right? It is highly possible. And so I look at all of us in the self-publishing community, and we're having wonderful times right now. In fact, last month was my best month ever. It's good stuff. But there will be a day at some point in the future, and like I said, my crystal ball is broken. When the governor shut down the state, my crystal ball is at the crystal ball repair shop, and now they went out of business, and I can't get my crystal ball back. I don't know what the future is going to hold. Right? I don't think anybody 6 months ago would have said, when that pandemic comes, we're going to really be sorry that, nobody knows that, right? But I do think that in the future, there will be some sort of an event that we could be viewing as a extinction event, as Christine Catherine Rush or Dean Wesley Smith calls it, for self-published writers. What will that be? I don't know. But as I think about my own career and I think about the things that are important, these pillars, I think, help me position myself to where I can survive whatever that extinction event is. So when I talk about becoming a world-class content creator, meaning writer, meaning YouTuber, meaning podcaster, it means, how can I get to the level of, say, a Michael Crichton or a John Grisham, right? I don't say that to be arrogant, but that's a great goal to work toward. How can I become a better storyteller? How can I control the minds of the people who listen to my podcast every week and the people who read my books, so that I can generate more sales, becoming a world-class marketer? How can I become a marketer who writes books that sell themselves, in addition to putting a lot of work and effort into my launches that generate lots of revenue for me, which supports my business? And then when I think about technology, I think the real advantage that indie authors are going to have, we have it today, but I think it's going, if certain people are smart about it, they can make it even more of an advantage. And that is, how can we use the power of automation as a business advantage? A lot of people are hiring assistants right now, and I got no problem with assistants, but my philosophy on this has always been, don't hire an assistant for something that you can already automate. So like, for example, database is a perfect example, right? So what I used to do is I used to pay an assistant to help me with my royalties. That assistant got so frustrated and pissed off with how difficult it was that he quit. He sent me an email. He said, "Michael, this is crap. My job is hell. I don't know how anybody could ever do this," and so on and so forth. And he sent me his resignation letter after 2 or 3 months. I couldn't even find an assistant to do my royalties for me. At least no assistant that would enjoy it, right? So when you think about that, why pay an assistant to do that if you can automate it? Because essentially what I have done with this database is I have automated the data entry for my royalties. Now I don't have to pay an assistant to do that. All I have to do, if I want it, is pay an assistant to take the royalties and upload them into the database, and then just look at the data to make sure that there's no anomalies. And so therefore I can free up an assistant to spend more time in better value add activities. You see, that's how you have to think about automation and efficiency. I don't think we think about it that way. I think we just try to find assistants that will do things for us that we don't have time to do, but we don't pay any attention to, is our assistant actually doing the right things? And are there ways that they could do them better? Again, I don't know why I'm one of the only few people that I know who says this, all right? But I think that is the future. So if you can, for example, learn to automate the majority of your non-essential tasks so that you free up your time to spend more time writing, well, that's a pretty darn good business advantage, right? Or you can free up your assistant and spend less money with your assistant fees. And I know that some people throw stones at me for that. I'm just saying this is a business, right? And a business has to be efficient. And in order to be efficient, you have to think about things in a different way. And I take an approach to the writing business through the lens where possible. You can go overboard with it. But I take the approach of, how can I become more efficient as a writer, because when I'm doing the things that I should be doing, which is writing, ideating, coming up with new content, coming up with strategy, talking to my readers, creating content, I make more money, right? And when I make more money and I do the things that I'm meant to be doing, I have happier readers. I'm happier. I'm less likely to burn out. That is an advantage in so many areas. And when I think about data and being able to have the right data and have it be nuanced to the point where I can see gaps and I can see opportunities without having to do a whole lot of digging, that in and of itself becomes another advantage. So the question that I have asked myself over the past month is, from a strategic perspective, 10, 20 years down the road, maybe more, is when the next extinction event happens that will affect self-published writers, how can I be prolific enough to weather the storm? Meaning I have a whole lot of books that are making a whole lot of money, and losing one revenue stream or a couple revenue streams won't necessarily hurt me. How can I be capitalized? Meaning, how can I make sure that I have enough money in the bank to weather these sorts of storms and get myself out of particular situations that might come up, right? Also, how can I be nimble? Meaning, how can I use technology to my advantage? Meaning, how can I go to where the puck is headed so that I don't have to worry so much about transitioning? Classic example of this is a lot of companies are finding out that, maybe it was a smart idea to have our employees work from home. A lot of companies resisted that before this coronavirus epidemic, or pandemic. But those companies that had invested in getting their employees to work from home, or at least allowing them to be able to do that and building that infrastructure, wow, they're reaping the benefits, and they're not having to transition or deal with a difficult transition nearly as bad as those companies that had their employees with desktop computers. So things like that, right? And then how can I make sure that I'm taking advantage of opportunities that I see today that are going to help me in the future? Now, I know I'm talking about me. I'm saying a lot of I's. I'm saying I this, how can I this, how can I that? I also think that these are things that you should be thinking about as a writer. Yes, okay, we got to write more books. Yes, we got to improve our craft. Yes, we have to learn marketing. We got to sell more books. And I know that the things that you're thinking about buying are related to writing craft and related to marketing. But I'm also here to tell you that there is a bigger picture that you have to think about. And your awareness of this picture will improve the more books that you have on the market. All right. And so I think strategy is so important, because I think it's really easy to keep your head down and not think at all about it. And then when something happens, you look up and you're like, oh, wait, hold on a second. What's going on? And so I don't want that for any of you. I don't know if it's just the risk management part of me thinking about strategy and making sure that I'm making the right choices and making as prudent choices as I can based on what I can see. And right now, in these uncertain times, there's some days where the visibility is really, really bad. But there's some days where there's clear skies. And some of the things that I think will always be true will always be true. Writing a lot of books, learning how to sell those books, learning copyright, making sure that you're putting your author business on firm footing and foundation, continuing to learning how to take advantage of opportunities. I think those things will never go out of style, and those are the things that will allow us to be cockroaches. I forget who did this. There was an author years ago. I think it was like 2011, 2012 maybe. They wrote a blog post, and they were talking about cockroaches, mammals, and dinosaurs. Which one are you? Do you want to be a dinosaur? Do you want to be a mammal? Or do you want to be a cockroach? If you think about dinosaur writers, they never adapt to the times. And when the meteor comes, they die out. The coronavirus is a great example of a meteor in this case. Makes you wonder who's going to be left standing when things calm down a little bit. Or do you want to be a mammal? Mammals are the ones who they're smart, they're adaptable, but sometimes they're too smart for their own good. All right. So to me, the classic great example of a mammal would be that writer who is all in on KU and doesn't see the benefit of diversifying their income. All right. Now, again, I'm not knocking you if you decide to do KU. I'm just saying it's not a good long-term strategy. And you are certainly a mammal if you don't understand that. It's one thing to understand it and operate in it. You take your chances, right? But it's another thing to say, well, Amazon will just make the most money forever, and I don't know why I even need to be on Kobo. I don't know why I need to have my books in audio. I don't know why I need to have my books on Barnes & Noble or, those sorts of things. Why do I need to have my books available in China? Kindle Unlimited is all I need. Well, Kindle Unlimited is only, it's not even, it's just a fraction of all the readers are out there. But anyway, that's mammals. And then the cockroaches are the ones who are around no matter what happens. If there's a nuclear war, cockroaches are going to survive. Cockroaches are the true survivors. They are the true long-term writers. Which one do you want to be? Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.